Welcome, everybody, to Shoot the Gap, the IDP Fantasy Football podcast, or show, rather, here on the Fantasy and Frames podcast and here on Fantasy and Frames Wednesdays. I'm your host, Jorge Edwards. I got Justin Taylor with me, as always, and we're going to do what we do every week, and that is get you ready for your IDP Fantasy Football matchups. This time, we're talking Week 10. Be back in a sec. Man, so JT, I want to talk to you about this Colts-Vikings game from over the weekend, okay? So I was taking on my wife in our home league, which is an offense and IDP league, and she had Jonathan Grenard and Harrison Smith, and I had Cameron Bynum, EJ Speed, and Nick Cross, okay?
Oh, that's a nice little Sunday night matchup there.
Right. So, but I was down 25 points. Okay. And given the scoring is pretty similar to Fantasy Pros IDP scoring. And with a minute left, Jonathan Grenard got his second sack, and my wife went up by 16/10 of a point. But then the score corrected itself from like a tackle that was made like 5 minutes earlier, and it put me up by 0.16 points. And so now I currently have won that matchup by 0.16 points. I am dreading tomorrow when stat corrections come through, because Thursdays is usually the day when the NFL publishes their stat corrections, especially for defense, and that's when IDP leagues and IDP managers can either be really, really happy or really, really upset. But I'm watching this game and I'm just like, man, like there are so many good options on Indianapolis. And we talked about this like earlier in the preseason, just how like, you know, you got DeForest Buckner back. Hell, even Grover Stewart was making plays.
Stewart's actually been a really good play this year. Like he in defensive tackle leagues, he has been really solid, where he's just been usually in the past, like just filling gaps, like taking on double teams. He's actually been pretty good this year.
Yeah, no, it's been crazy. And you're seeing that, you know, this is the first time I've actually sat and actually watched a Colts game. And one, I didn't realize how fast Zaire Franklin is getting to the ball. Two, I didn't realize how fast EJ Speed was going sideline to sideline, getting to the ball. And third, I did not realize how physical Nick Cross is making a tackle on running plays. Like these Colts are like legit, like awesome to watch from an IDP perspective, and just, you know, you're studying the defense, and that was a fun game. The outcome was not probably what you wanted, but still, it's definitely fun to take a look at when I was watching on Sunday night.
Yeah, it was all. I mean, it was a tough loss, obviously, for the Colts. I mean, that's a game I don't expect to win going into Minnesota the way the Vikings are playing. But yeah, I tell you what, IDP purposes, they've given up a lot of points this year, but man, they get a lot of tackles and make a lot of plays. Nick, I'm loving what I'm seeing on Nick Cross. When they drafted him, he was super young. I think he had just turned 20. And so, you know, they really were trying to get him in, and he was a guy that they loved the athleticism, but he didn't have a lot of gameplay. Maryland, it's nice to see that it's 3 years you've been waiting for him to hit, but it's nice to see he's finally hitting. And then you look at it and you remember, crap, this dude just turned 23. Right. He just turned 23. So there's guys coming out in the draft that are going to be his age or slightly younger that will be rookies next year. And now he's had 3 years in the league. It's nice. And it's one of those things. And I tell people, I had Nick Cross on so many IDP teams, and like there was a few of them I dropped him this year. I just wasn't sure it was going to happen. I'm like, oh man, I don't know if he's going to be the guy he's ever going to be able to get in there. And I dropped him in a couple spots. And if I could, I went right back and picked him right back up after he got in there and started starting the season. But they do got some athleticism and speed. Biggest thing for them is they got to kind of get up in some games, because when they get behind and teams can pound the rock on them, that's when they struggle a little bit. But man, they do have a lot of athleticism and speed though.
Yeah, no, it is something to watch here. Speaking of watching, for those who are tuning in, thank you very much for tuning in to Shoot the Gap. If you're following us over on YouTube, or excuse me, on X or Facebook, why don't you head over to our YouTube channel and hit that subscribe button and notification bell so when you're notified when Fantasy and Frames puts out fantastic fantasy football content. And if I do say so myself, and yes, I'm extremely biased, some pretty darn good IDP content as well. And speaking of IDP content, let's get into a couple questions already in the chat. Let's go. Will popped in first, so we'll just say, hey, Will, what's going on? He said, I grabbed Dan Henley of the Los Angeles Chargers off of the waiver wire last night and dropped Nakobe Dean. I'm thinking of starting him over Pratt, but I'm thinking perhaps benching him for Bolton or benching Bolton for him. Thoughts? I want to hear your initial thoughts, JT, then I'll give mine.
I do like the Henley pickup. Dean has been really good this year, actually. He had his worst game, I think, of the season last week as far as tackle totals and everything else. He's been really, really solid this year in scoring. So I don't necessarily want to lose him, but I can understand maybe making the move. I think he might have only had like 2 assisted tackles. It was one of his worst outings of the year. I know. I was trying to see if I could find it right away. I'm not seeing it.
Interception was the saving grace for him.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. So he has been pretty good this year. After everybody's worried about, Pratt has been an absolute stud. I know we've talked about him a couple times on this show this year. He's been great this year. I'm definitely starting. I think I'm starting Pratt. I just think the Ravens are going to pound the rock. He's going to have to make tackles in the run game. I like Pratt. I'm starting Pratt for sure. Now the question for me is, am I playing Henley over Bolton? This one's a toughie for me. Bolton is my Mizzou guy. I love Bolton. He's my guy. Even when it's maybe the stats say don't play him, it's hard for me to bench him just because I like him. Here's the thing is, I think the Chiefs and the Bucs are going to get a lot of offensive plays. The Bucs have been one of those teams that they've moved the ball a lot on offense, but they've given up quite a bit on defense. I don't know if I can sit Bolton. I think in that move, I'm playing Bolton and Pratt, especially actually, sorry, Bucs and
Broncos.
Bucs and Chiefs played last week. Sorry about that. I'm throwing that one up. They're playing the Broncos. I think he can make some plays in that game. He's always a guy that can make something happen. You can see him get a pick. You could do something like that. It's for me, it's hard to sit him. So I always feel like if I sit him, that's the week he's going to just absolutely blow up. So I'm probably playing both. I'm definitely playing Pratt, but if you feel good and you got a feeling about Henley, I could see you playing him over or Bolton. My worry would be the Chargers defense plays really well and the Titans offense don't get a lot of offensive plays. And so it's hard for guys to rack up a lot of stats in that game. That would be my worry in that game.
What you said just there is the only reason I would pivot Bolton over Henley, because you look at Henley's performance last week, tackle efficiency 17.9%, PFF tackles 12, led the team, led the linebacking core in total defensive snap share. So he is the LB1 for that team. And so you have that opportunity, consistent opportunity on the field. But you're right. Tennessee is not going to be able to sustain drives. Therefore, they're not going to give him much quote unquote playing time volume. So yeah, it's Pratt and Bolton for me also.
Yeah.
As far as dropping Nakobe Dean, I get it. I get why you did it because of the opportunity with Henley. If there was a way to go get him and have Henley
go pick up Henley Dean back as well. I agree with you. If I could go back and get him, I know there's some leagues with short benches, so you're trying to make the pickup and drop every week. Right. I tell you what, Henley, he has been nice because he was good earlier in the year. Then there was a couple like iffy weeks, but he's been really solid the last 2 weeks. So I can absolutely see that. That would be my only play. Is I would be slightly worried that you don't get a ton of offensive plays from the Titans to make plays there. But I wouldn't fault you if you started. I would start Pratt for sure, but I wouldn't fault you if you started Henley over Bolton.
Next, we got Summer in the chat. Summer, welcome back. She asking, is Damani Richardson Let's see here. Will he keep his job in Carolina? Also, is Tyke Smith viable this week versus San Francisco? It's funny that you mentioned both of those players because they may or may not be mentioned later on in the show when we get into our plays and fades segment. So,
Summer, stick around. We're going to talk about both those guys.
Yeah, if you don't mind, we would appreciate you sticking around because we will get into that real quick later on in the show. But yeah, good tease right there. Love it. I got Jamie in the chat. What's up, guys? What's up, Jamie? Good to see you. He says, JT, long time no see.
Just did a show with Jamie before Shoot the Gap here with our guy Steve, the IDP hunter, and Jamie. We all jumped on a show, had a great time with them. Go over and maybe definitely check out their show. You get a chance tomorrow morning. I think he's going to put that show out tomorrow morning. So I'll retweet it for anybody who wants to hear what we talked about on that show. I'll retweet it on my X page at JT Orange tomorrow morning. So had a great time with Jamie and Steve there on their show.
Willpower in regards to what we were saying about going back and getting the Kobe Dean. He says, I could go back and get him. There's no waiver wire timeline. Players become instant free agents. Get them. What are you waiting for? Stop what you're doing. Pause the show.
Load up those backers. Yeah, load up those linebackers. Unless you just don't have any spots where you're going to have to drop somebody that you need to play, man. I'd load up and keep all those guys if I can.
Run for your life. Go get the Kobe Dean roster. That's awesome, Will. Let's see. We got Brandon Hallam in the chat says he thinks the Texans are going to beat the Lions on Sunday Night Football. He says in the coin toss. Then it gets up. I would agree. I think Detroit is going to take it to.
I think it's gonna be an interesting game. I think the Texans. We're gonna see what the Texans can do if they can keep it close. But Lions have just been playing lights out lately.
Jamie here asking, is Nick Morrow going to be a thing this year? Previous years are playing 80 to 100% of snaps. He was getting 8 to 12 tackles per game, but hasn't played all season. I think that's kind of all you really need to know right there.
Yeah, Morrow was he kind of was a product of playing on a team that had no one else last year. Like he kept filling in. What he was on the Eagles last year, right? When they just had all the linebacker injuries, nobody was healthy, and he got stuffed in there and was playing because they had nobody else. He's one of those guys. He has to have volume to be playable in my book. If he's not on a team where he's just playing all the time because they got to play him, he's not a super talented guy. He doesn't do anything super well. He just has to get nonstop snaps if he's going to be something. To be honest, in my top 150 list, he is nowhere near my top 150 lists. So he's not a guy I have on any of my rosters.
Agreed. Same here. Summer here with another question. Dean over Edwards, Speed, Highsmith, or Van Ginkel? Let's see here. Let's answer this first part of the question first. Would you play Nakobe Dean over TJ Edwards? I would. Would you play Nakobe Dean over EJ Speed? I would have a hard time doing that.
I'm playing Speed.
Yeah.
They just get so many snaps. He's been almost clear-cut double-digit tackles every week.
I would play Nakobe Dean over Alex Highsmith. And Van Ginkel. Who are the Vikings? The Jacksonville Jaguars. Yeah, that's the thing. If this is like a league where it's like you have high impact plays, I could see Van Ginkel causing some damage and getting you some sacks. And
if you're only getting like a point or a point and a half for a sack, I think I would play Dean. But if you're in like a league that you get like 4 points or 5 points for a sack and like really good numbers for like a sack fumble, it'd be hard not to play Van Ginkel this week. I would go Speed. I would go Edwards. I go Speed, Edwards, Van Ginkel, but Dean would be my other guy. He's saying he can drop Christian Ellis for Dean.
Do it.
I agree on that one too.
Sorry, I said Summer, but I read Will's. So let me go to Summer and read Summer your question. Sorry about that. Need 3 out of Brian Burns, Jack Gibbons, Levante David, Nick Bolden, Aziz Al-Shayer this week. So we're assuming that Aziz Al-Shayer will be playing this week, and it's not just another week where Henry To'oTo'o takes over the majority of snaps here for the linebacking core for the Texans. So I need to let's look that up really quickly here. Let me do it with the NFL injury report.
Yeah, look that up. Gibbons has been extremely good this year, which I've never been a Gibbons guy. I saw something. He's like missed like one tackle, like all season. He's been really good. I've already kind of talked about Bolton. I know the numbers have been a little disappointing for where most people took him, but that's partly why I'm got so much invested in him that I'm just playing him every week. Levante David, what he's been a little bit on the struggle bus, if I remember correctly. Let me look and see what he's got the last couple weeks. No, he's been bad. He's been about 8 tackles. So he's been right in the mix there. About 7-8 tackles every week, about 4 or 5 solos. Brian Burns again would be a sack league. How many points are you getting for sacks? He usually doesn't add a ton of tackles. You think going against the Panthers, you would think this would be like an ultimate matchup for him where he would have a shot to put up could have a big game. So I would probably lean for impact plays, lean Burns. He did have 4 straight games with sacks until last week without one against Washington. But Bryce Young is no Jaden Daniels. So I'm playing Burns. I'm probably playing Burns, Gibbons, Bolton, kind of, because I'm kind of leaning that direction. But I'll show you if he's hard not to play if he's actually going this week.
Yeah. So checking in on the injury report. So Aziz Al-Shir was limited in practice today. So you're not going to find out whether he's playing.
He's going to be tough because he's been questionable the last like 3 weeks. Like he was out, then questionable, and then didn't play. So I'm real nervous about him. And you've got other good options. If you had like a garbage option, I'd be like, oh, just wait on just wait on him. But I'm probably who would you go here? I think you got to play Burns for big upside play if there's any kind of sack premium. I like Bolton. For me, it's a toss up between Levante David and Gibbs.
Yeah, I would go Burns, Levante David, and Bolton. Yeah, that's where I would go. So thank you very much for the questions, Summer and Will. Friesel Fantasy, we see you. We see you with these offensive questions, not offensive questions, if you get what I'm saying. So how it works here on Shoot the Gap, since we are an IDP Fantasy Football pod or show and we like talking defense, we may not answer your offensive questions live on air, but JT here is going to be answering them in the chat for you. So feel free to just keep asking any question you want, and we'll be answering them if they're defense related on air, and if they're not, we got you covered in the chat. So just because you don't hear us talking about it, don't think that we are ignoring you, because we are definitely not. Okay. All right. Well, while we're doing that, let's get into some news and notes because some things have gone down in the past couple days. Okay, so there's been a few trades here that have been interesting. We've covered some of them leading up to the trade deadline, but the past couple days we did see an increase in opportunity for some of these players. Let's go to the first one off and this is somebody that you'll enjoy talking about, or maybe you won't, depending. JT Preston Smith told the Green Bay Packers coaching staff and organization, this defensive scheme doesn't really fit my skill set. I like to be traded. Okay, they traded him to Pittsburgh. He's now probably the B behind Alex Highsmith. And what are your thoughts for Preston Smith's upside? He went from having a starting role opposite Rashawn Gary to now the backup here for Alex Highsmith. Or do you think he makes a push for that edge 2 spot there? What are your thoughts here?
For the Steelers, as a Steelers fan, I like this move with Herbert being banged up and Highsmith being banged up early in the year. I love the move for their depth. For IDP purposes, I don't love this move for him. I just think he's going to be a rotational piece unless someone gets hurt. So you're going to have to need to either have a TJ Watt injury or you're going to have Highsmith get hurt again. Other than that, I think they're going to do what they do with Herbig when Herbig's healthy, and he's been hurt. So I think that's why the Steelers, looking at making this move because he hasn't been healthy the last couple of weeks. But they love to get like Highsmith and Watt like a series off every couple drives where they like give them a whole series off, let them catch their breath, let them take a break, and then come back and go 100% hard because both those guys play real hard. I mean, they play real hard. So they want them to go 100% and not get worn out. I think for right now, without injury, he's just going to be a rotational piece and someone's going to be very difficult to count on in any way. I just don't see him getting a very big snap share without an injury.
Can you imagine if like you're the offensive coordinator and you're like, okay, so not only do I have to take into account TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith, now I got to take into account a healthy Nick Herbig and Preston Smith.
I mean, those are four like outstanding pass rushers on the outside. I mean, like I said, as a Steelers fan, I was like, man, this is a nice pickup, especially with the injury problems they've had this year. I'm like, this is because we've seen in the past, if TJ Watt gets hurt and goes out, this Steelers team's just it's crazy. They're a completely different team without him. Their record is like, I don't even have it in front of me, but it's terrible. I think they've won like one game. They're like 1 in like 12 without him. And then their record with him is ridiculously good. So I like the depth piece, but for IDP purposes, I don't like it at all. Now, again, I said if Highsmith gets hurt and it's like gonna be a couple week injury or he goes on IR or something, then Preston Smith's the guy that's gonna probably get a shot in front of Herbig, and Herbig will be the rotation guy. But I think they're both going to be rotation guys at this point.
Next on the list here is a trade that I was pretty happy to see here. For real football purposes, Marshawn Lattimore getting traded from the Saints to my Washington Commanders. I love it. I love it for real football. For IDP Fantasy Football, giving, you don't really want to touch the shutdown corners because quarterbacks tend to stay away from them. And if they're staying away from them, then you're not really getting the points because they're not getting the ball thrown their way and there's no opportunity for pass deflections or interceptions. What I do like, though, for this here is that it actually helps to move the rookie Mike Summerstill back into the slot, I believe, because he had been playing out wide with Benjamin St-Juste the past couple weeks. And I think obviously Lattimore is going to go be the outside with St-Juste. And so you have the rookie who they drafted this year from Michigan, who is a very physical cornerback on the smaller side, but he's a very physical cornerback and likes to make plays on the ball. And so you're definitely going to be, utilizing all his skills and athleticism that you drafted him for because of this move. And, slot cornerback is a position that can be favorable in fantasy leagues and IDP fantasy leagues where you have cornerback specific designations. What do you think of this move? Or did I hit it on the head with everything I just said?
I think you hit it on the head. Sandstrom's a guy I like. In my cornerback leagues, I was taking him either at the end of my rookie draft or he was one of the very first free agent pickups I was making. Because I was like, if he plays that slot corner, I like him a ton at that slot corner position. So I was disappointed when he got moved outside wide. I would love to see him get moved back inside. I think that would be phenomenal for him.
Next one on the list here, Baron Browning getting traded from the Denver Broncos to the Arizona Cardinals. I think that's great for Nick Bonito.
I was thinking the exact same thing. I was like, I love it for all my Nick Bonito shares, as now he doesn't have to rotate as much.
Yeah, exactly. And you look at what's going on in Arizona with David Collins being the more productive. Well, I use that term loosely. More productive edge rusher. This past week had a win rate of 11.5% and a pressure rate of 19.2%. Played only in 54.1% of the snaps. Then you have 4 other edge rushers who are cycled in as the edge rusher 2 as 33%, this guy, 32%, that guy, 25, 23. So I think adding Baron Browning adds more stability to at least one of the edge rusher positions. And so it'd probably be Browning and Zaven Collins going forward. Neither of them are fantasy viable, in my opinion, at this point in the season. We don't know the dynamics. We don't know how long it's going to take Browning, to get up to speed. But if anything, we've seen the flashes from Nick Bonito. We know Jonathan Cooper. He's. I want to say he's more hit than miss this year than he has been in previous years, but I definitely think that's obviously a plus for Nick Bonito and his opportunity there in Denver. Going now to a trade that our own Nate Markham was happy to see last week. Josh Uche got traded to the Chiefs from the New England Patriots. One of the things Nate Markham, and you can follow him at Nate Markham, tweeted out or posted, whatever the equivalent is now for X, is that Uche just never got the defensive snap share that you wanted. He would have the pressure rate, he would have the efficiency. He just didn't see the field, a good amount of time there. It's now, what's the deal with him? He goes to Kansas City, and now he's going to have to be fighting with Karlaftis. Is he the opposite edge defender here for Kansas City? They still rotate Chris Jones everywhere along that defensive line. So can you count on Uche being the guy there? I don't know. That's a great question. I'm very curious to see what the usage is going to be going forward for him. What are your thoughts here on Josh Uche here, JT?
Yeah, that's the one that I'm not totally sold on. I know the guy's got some talent. I know that he's one of those players that a lot of people have kind of expected a lot of, and he hasn't really come through. I'm not super excited about him. Maybe he can that's a really good defense, so maybe that helps him out a little bit. I think it's a nice move for them in trading. I'm not sure that he's somebody I'm like sprinting out to get all of a sudden.
Right. I hear you. Bronson
I'm answering his question right now. He was asking. I just typed out an answer. He was asking a trade question, offensive running backs. So I just answered that for him.
Gotcha.
So Brunson, if you're listening or watching, jump and check the chat out there. I just answered your trade question for you.
Nice. The last one I think has probably the most fantasy relevance. I'm sure there were other trades, like Tre'Davious White traded to the Ravens. I'm not really thinking about that from a fantasy point of view. The one that I am thinking about a lot, and it's going to kind of tie into our next segment here, is Zadarius Smith getting traded to the Detroit Lions from the Cleveland Browns, who was signed from the Minnesota Vikings, who was signed from the Green Bay Packers. So there's like a Kevin Bacon trail of connections here with Zadarius Smith. But one thing you can say is that the guy is still a pretty decent edge rusher, and he's definitely the answer here for I shouldn't say he's the answer, but he is the quote unquote replacement for Aiden Hutchinson, who went down a couple weeks ago. But since we're talking about Zadarius Smith, let's get into some money or mirage right now. All right, so it's very simple, folks. If you're just tuning in for the first time, we're going to give you a statement, and you're going to tell us whether it's a money statement, meaning I'm all in on it, or it's a mirage, and it's like, it sounds too good to be true, or you're crazy. Which, both can be true, the way the world's working these days. So money or mirage, JT, let me ask you, then I'll take the next one, and then you can take the one after that. Zadarius Smith, now that he's with the Detroit Lions, will make him a top 36 defensive lineman for IDP Fantasy Football.
This one's a tough one for me. I think he's in a better spot here. He's going to be on a team that's winning more often than losing like he was before. So I think he's going to have a better pass rush opportunity. I haven't been super impressed with him lately. He's a guy that I've been kind of fading lately. It's like you love the name, you love what he's done in the past.
Right.
Is he a little past? I like the move for the Lions because you got to do something with Aiden Hutchinson out. And I don't think they went too crazy to get him. So I like the move in real life. I don't know that he all of a sudden jumps way up my rankings as someone I'm like super excited to get all of a sudden. So for me, I think it's a proved position, a better spot on a better team. He's going to have better opportunities, but to me, it's still a little bit of a mirage.
Yeah, so we brought this up on I should say we did, but Kevin Tompkins brought this up on the Waiver Wire show yesterday. The Detroit Lions blitz like the fifth most out of any defense so far this year in the NFL. And so when I think about that, I start to think, all right, well, if they're blitzing from like the linebacker position, or you have, cornerbacks or safeties moving up closer to the line of scrimmage, they're creating some pressures on the other side. Charles Harris, no disrespect, is not exactly striking fear into the hearts of offensive linemen who are trying to block him on the other end now from Zadarius Smith. So if you're attacking the offense from that side, then you're kind of freeing up some more one-on-one opportunities there for Zadarius Smith. So I think there is upside for him fantasy-wise. But, when we talk about fantasy, scoring, we talk about Fantasy Pros IDP scoring because it's one that you, the fan, can go on fantasypros.com and see what the scoring is and track your players using that scoring very simply. Versus other IDP scoring where it's like, oh, well, it's in my league specific thing, but that doesn't help you understand how things are being tracked. So that's why we use IDP scoring from Fantasy Pros. Anyhow, circling the wagons here. I think the sack numbers go up, but I think he gets lost in the shuffle of like the defensive linemen who are, giving you 9 to 10 points a game, which, any given week using this particular scoring could be, 20 defensive linemen deep or 15 defensive linemen deep. So he would have to have some plays on the ball, like forced fumbles, fumble recoveries, tackles for losses, on top of sacks for him to really crack into that top 36 for me. And I think, like I said, if you're playing in a league where there are bonuses for sacks, or there's like just high point values assigned to a sack, then you're talking a flex play option this week. But as far as somebody, if you're the Aiden Hutchinson manager, you're not starting Zadarius Smith in his spot on your roster week in and week out, thinking that that's going to be the band-aid that you're going to be using. Chances are you found a better alternative already. If he hasn't, then let us know, and we'll help you find somebody who may be giving you a little bit more upside than Zadarius Smith there. So those are our thoughts with that. All right, JT, ask me the second one here.
Yeah, Money Mirage. Danico Autry is a top 36 defensive lineman for fantasy with or without Will Anderson missing time.
Did you see Danico Autry go crazy this past week? Like, you saw Will Anderson, he was running back and forth on the sideline, or he was doing something on the sideline. He wasn't playing on the field is the important thing. And Danico Autry just went all Danico Autry. First of all, before I get into that, when I say Danico Autry went all Danico Autry, you know what I'm referencing, right? Or do you not know what I'm referencing?
No, I'm not sure what you're referencing with that. I'm like, why am I missing this Danico Autry reference?
Because it's not so much like the Danico Autry. It's so much back in like 2007, 2008, they had this like DirecTV commercial where LL Cool J is talking about Phillip Rivers going off, and he's like, Phillip Rivers was going all Phillip Rivers. And so now it's my
okay. I remember that. I was not remembering that reference, but now that you bring it up, I'm like, okay. I was like, I totally missed that one. Sometimes, Jorge, you throw ones that get right by me. I gotta get my game together here.
It's 2024. Chances are this went by basically everybody in the chat and anybody who will ever watch this episode or listen to it in podcast form anyhow.
I feel like that's me all the time. I say stuff and I think that it's a totally reasonable reference, and people look at me like I'm nuts, and I'm like, oh, that probably is a little older and a little more obscure than most people would realize.
I love the obscure. I just what can I say?
I love obscure references. I'm the same way.
It's my jam. Danico Autry finished week 9 as the DL13 with 3 solo tackles, 2 sacks, insert tackles for losses, 2 tackles for losses, I believe, for 17.5 fantasy points. and he was playing a majority of the snaps there. Opposite to Neil Hunter. Hunter was playing 72.4% of the snaps, and you had Autry playing 60.3%, and a lot of that is due to the fact that Will Anderson was out for most of the game. The question here, though, is he a top defensive lineman for fantasy with or without Will Anderson? Well, with him, without him, I should say. Yeah, the guy finished, the DL 13. So that's his ceiling, right? And to be honest with you, I think his floor is probably still in the double digits. With Will Anderson there, look, they still brought him in free agency for a reason. This guy makes plays whether he's playing outside or he's playing in the interior. They brought him in to play in the interior, and he would have been playing in the interior had he not got busted for the PED situation there that had him suspended for the first 6 games or so. I still think he has that upside, especially in defensive tackle leagues, specific where you have to start a defensive tackle. I think he definitely has a top 36 defensive lineman upside here. For leagues where it's just a defensive lineman, he would have to be the opposite guy, Danielle Hunter, with Will Anderson missing time. Does that sound too unreasonable or reasonable?
Nope. I agree with you. Dude, Danico Autry is a guy that he just been so underrated his whole career. The guy performs. He can rush from the inside. He can rush from the outside. If you want to put on the DN, he can play DN, but he also can rush from the interior. I mean, he's in his 10th year in the league. The guy has had 7 or more sacks the last 6, 6 seasons, 5 out of 6. He's had 7.5 or more sacks 5 out of the last 6 years. He had 11.5 sacks last year from Tennessee, playing almost exclusively from inside. He had 11.5 sacks. I mean, This guy knows how to get to the QB. He's obviously rested. He's been sitting out. He's good to go. So he's a guy that in a defense, if you can get him as a defensive tackle start league, absolutely get him in there and start playing him, especially if he gets moved to the end and you can play him as a defensive tackle at the end. Oh, sold all day long. I'm playing, but I do think, depending on your league you're in, I think he'll be valuable anyway. Because even if he plays a couple games outside and Anderson comes back and he still moves in, he's proven he can put in heat on the inside. And then also, what are you going to do? Like, you're worried about those guys on the outside. That just opens things up for him up the middle. I like Autry a lot. He's one of those guys, I think you see him out on the waiver wire a lot. People kind of look past him and they, he's an older guy. He's around. He's never been like a huge name. He's always been good. I remember when the Colts let him go, I was not happy about it. I was like, man, this guy's just so solid. He was so good for like the 3 years or so he played for the Colts. Let him go the rival to Tennessee. And what did he go to Tennessee and do? 9 sacks, 8 sacks, 11.5 sacks. I'm like,
right.
Should have kept him. So I really like him. He kind of got moved out once Buckner got moved in, because then they had Grover Stewart to play like kind of the 1 tech, and then Buckner to kind of play that 3 tech. So that's kind of why he got moved by the Colts. But man, he's just a really solid player. I like him. If he's out there on your waivers in a redraft or even a dynasty, say somebody dropped him, because if you're in a league that doesn't let you put a guy on IR when they're suspended, there's a good chance somebody dropped him because they're not just going to sit there and hold him and take over roster spots. So go out and grab him. I like it. I think it's a money play. I really do.
All right. So just to track everything, we're going Mirage for Za'Darius. We're going money for Danico. Final money in Mirage for the night. And we kind of touched on it a little bit earlier with Preston Smith now out of Green Bay. We all know the good years with Rashawn Gary a couple years ago. We know that this has not been the case this year. But with Preston Smith out of Green Bay, and it looks like the 2 major edge rushing players, at least from my perspective, are Rashawn Gary and Lucas Van Ness. Does Rashawn Gary become, again, one of the top edge rushers in the NFL, as well as for fantasy purposes this year? Or let me rephrase this. I said that in the form of a question. Damn it, I watched too much Jeopardy. Is Rashawn Gary, now that Preston Smith's gone, is he going to be a top edge rusher for fantasy going forward? Damn it, I asked the same thing in the question form again. God damn it.
You're all right. I got you. Rashawn Gary, man, he is just one of those frustrating guys for IDP. It's like he always starts the year really highly ranked by everyone. You always think this is the breakout. He always ends up putting like one good game together early and gets you all excited, and then he just leaves you hanging. And then he just like doesn't do anything and doesn't do anything and doesn't do anything, and you're just like you're so frustrated. So this is obviously a better position for him because you think they've got to play him more now. But even when he's played, he's not been super productive. I've got Gary in quite a few places, and I can't get myself to move off of him just because I got him at a decent price or whenever I paid for him when I got him originally in dynasty leagues. It just feels too bad to give up on. I can't give up on him just yet, but I'm not playing him. I have to tell you, if I'm in a league where I've got a couple of best ball leagues, and that's probably the best place to have him right now. But yeah, I'm not putting him in my lineup at all. I just can't trust it. But I can't move off him yet. He still has a ton of talent, and now that Smith's gone, I do kind of want to see where he can go the rest of the year.
All right, so rounding out the 3 questions here for Winning Mirage, it is a mirage that Zadarius Smith will be a top 36 defensive lineman for fantasy. It is money that Danico Autry has top 36 upside for fantasy without Will Anderson, and even with Will Anderson if you play in defensive tackle leagues. And a mirage that Preston Smith will be one of the top edge rushers for any NFL in fantasy now that Preston Smith is out of town. All right, well, let's get to some of the important takes here we have here at Shoot the Gap. We're going to get into our plays and fades for week 10. And just again, a shout out to everybody in the chat. You know, we appreciate you tuning in. Everybody who's watching on X and on YouTube, thank you very much. If you have any questions, seriously, folks, just drop them in the YouTube chat. Whether they're defense questions, IDP questions, we'll answer them on the stream live. If they're offense questions or any other type of questions, if they're funny questions, we'll answer them live also. So just throwing that out there. But if they're offense-based questions, JT's got you in the chat also. Let's get into our plays and fades, some of our favorite plays and fades for the week. For more plays and fade options, however, don't forget tomorrow, fantasyandframes.com is where all our articles are at. We definitely recommend you go check those out before setting your lineups each and every week. We got plays and fades for offense and defense special teams. We got plays and fades for IDP. We got DFS, DraftKings recommendations. We have flex plays of the week. We even have this really cool series called the Fantasy Football Laboratory from Colby Conway, who's one of the writers over at Fantasy Alarm, where he does like a deep dive into a few players here, like 4 or 5 players that have just been like trending in one direction, and he kind of helps bring you back to earth as far as like, is what you're seeing legit or not, or aka money or mirage. And it's definitely worth checking out. Plus, you get to see our rankings over there at fantasyandframes.com. But tomorrow, the IDP plays and fades will be coming out here. But as far as some plays and fades that may not be on the article, let me start with my play of the week here.
Summer. Hopefully, you're still listening. We're on your guys here. This is your question from earlier.
Oh my God! Should we start with defensive backs first? Since that was
you had 2 of them. This is your first one's your guy that she asked. She asked about two guys earlier in the show.
I was going to go defensive lineman, linebacker, defensive back. So let's just do.
Well, the first one, the first defensive lineman play. Didn't she ask about your guy here? I'm almost positive she did. I'm going back and looking here. Yes, she.
I think she asked about.
Nope, you're right. Oh, yeah. Hey, let's go defensive backs. Let's switch it up for once. Let's go. Yes. Let's switch it up for once for Summer. Let's go defensive backs first for Summer since she asked a question here. I'm pulling up the question she asked earlier. So here it is. This is Summer's question she asked at the beginning of the show. We told her we're going to get to it. Do you think Damani Richardson will keep the job in Carolina? Also, Tyke Smith viable this week versus San Francisco? Thank you, Summer. Thank you for the question. We're going to jump into those right now.
So I believe you and I both have, so to answer your question, and on behalf of JT and myself, yes to both.
We like both of them.
You look at Damani Richardson, it played 98.8% of the total defensive snaps shared, played 20.3%, excuse me, of box snaps, aka closer to the line of scrimmage, while also playing, in coverage at deep safety and playing in the slot at 19%. He's not losing his job. I think they finally figured out what they're doing at the safety position there. And, you can't ignore his productivity. DB 15, 16.5 points last week, with 12 tackles and a pass deflection. And let's remember here what really is important here when we look at the tackle numbers. 8 solo tackles, which they always count for more points than they do assisted tackles, to the 4 assisted tackles. I am all in on Damani Richardson. He is definitely somebody who's not a mainstream name yet, which is great for you, because if he's available on your waiver wire or you have him, get him or keep him, because I think they started to figure out just, dare I say, what they're doing at the defensive back position in Carolina, which they haven't had that figured out ever since they had Jeremy Chin, Von Bell, and Xavier Woods rotating all at the same time. Like, no, now they have their two. They have their 2 guys right there. Yes, all on board Damani Richardson this week against the New York Giants, who they should be running the ball a lot, which is great for Damani Richardson being closer to the line of scrimmage. Again, going back to his box snap percentage. What about you, JT? What about?
And then I'll jump in. I agree with everything you said on Richardson. I'm going to jump in and tell you why I like Tyke Smith, the rookie. They're getting him involved. There was a question, like, he's been playing the slot corner. Those questions like, how much playing time is he going to get? Last week, he got 84.7% of snaps in the slot. And then he also got another 13.9% of snaps in the box. So he was playing, and then he got 85% of total snap share. So he was on the field a bunch for the Bucs. Love to see that. Question was, hey, if they don't play a lot of 11 personnel, how much playing time he gets? Well, we saw what the Bucs decided to do in that game against the Chiefs. They left him in and let him help cover on Travis Kelce. Well, who do they got this week? The Niners, George Kittle. I think they're going to do the same thing. I think they're going to play him a lot. I think he's going to help on Kittle. He had a really, really nice week last week. Finishes DB7 in Fantasy Pros. 9 total tackles of pass defense. 8 of those tackles solo. As I said, 85% of snaps, had 18.3 points. Didn't play the week before because of injury, so he had 2 down weeks, which is kind of what people forgot about him. What you got to go back to is the 2 weeks before the injury where he got hurt in the Baltimore game and then missed the Atlanta game. You go back to the 2 weeks before that against Atlanta and New Orleans. He played 99% of snaps against Atlanta, only 60 against New Orleans, but was super productive in both those games, scoring 20.5 fantasy points and 18 fantasy points as he finished his DB1 and DB5 those 2 weeks. 11 tackles and 5 tackles, 3 combined pass defense and an interception. He's a rookie. He's getting on the field. They're liking what they're seeing out of him. I definitely think he's a play with this. If you look at what they did last week against the Chiefs, I don't think there's any reason for them to change exactly them doing the same type of thing against the Niners with George Kittle. So I'm all in. Tyke Smith is my DB play this week, and I know, and Damani Richardson is your play this week. So great question, Summer. Somehow you were in our heads. You knew exactly who we liked from the beginning. Love that.
Love it. Will's got a follow-up to what we were just talking about. What happens to Richardson if Fuller comes back? So one of the things, I talked about was that he plays slot coverage really, a lot for the safety position. Not, obviously he's not a cornerback. And he plays the deep safety position. And so when I'm looking at, some of the metrics right here, one of the things I like to look at is what's going to keep a guy on the field, right? It's their productivity, it's their ability to make defensive stops, so on and so forth. Playing that high percentage at deep safety makes me think, all right, if I'm the coach, I want somebody who's good in coverage. Damani Richardson allows an NFL quarterback passer rating when the quarterback is targeting a wide receiver. he allows the quarterback to have a passer rating of 93.8. So anything under 100 is pretty good. Jordan Fuller, on the other hand, when a quarterback targets a receiver that's in Jordan Fuller's proximity, allows a perfect quarterback rating of 158.3. That's not great for playing in coverage. Therefore, I feel like that's the stat right there. And that's that coverage ability by Damani Richardson is going to be the reason why you're going to see Richardson still have an influence on this defense and in this secondary going forward when Fuller does come back. Both Richardson and Fuller, great at run tackling, great at run defense, great at tackling, but it's the coverage abilities of Damani Richardson that I think will help keep him on the field going forward. So great questions here. But let's get back now that we covered defensive. Well, since we're at defensive back, let's get into the people that we're not so high on at defensive back. And for me, I mentioned it. I mentioned his name earlier when we were talking about. I was playing my wife in IDP Fantasy Football this past week, and I had Cameron Bynum on my roster here. And look, for me, it comes down to how close a player is to the line of scrimmage to make plays on the ball. Harrison Smith in Week 9 played a box snap percentage of 25.9%, which great, awesome, 64.8%. 0% of the slot, not great. It is what it is. Josh Metellus is playing the numbers that you do want. 50% in the slot, 25% at deep safety, 20%. 25% at deep safety, 25% in the slot, and 50% in the box. Wow, a lot of terms right there. Here's the key takeaway here. Cameron Bynum is playing 79.5% at deep safety and 4.5% in the slot. Only played 9.1% of his snaps in the box, farther away from the line of scrimmage, farther away from the ball. Therefore, you're farther away from making plays on the ball. And then taking on Jacksonville this week. I know Trevor Lawrence likes to push the ball down the field, but something tells me this is going to be a get-right game for the running game here for Jacksonville. They're going to get back to that and take the pressure off of Trevor Lawrence, because we saw Trevor Lawrence. He did great against the Eagles. He helped lead them back, but you saw at the end of the day he made that costly interception. I think they want to establish, the run again back in Jacksonville. That's where they were having, some semblance of success in terms of balance on offense, and that's going to help, or I should say, hurt Cameron Bynum's opportunity this week. What are your thoughts here, JT?
Yeah, I agree with you. I like where your head's at on that one. He is playing a lot of deep safety. The problem for me with the Vikings, when you look at the Vikings, that they just got so many other guys that are playing closer to the line and that can tackle. So it's like they don't need him to do a lot of stuff. They just need him to cover the back end. So it's not like he's one of these safeties like in Antoine Winfield where they're moving him around a bunch, letting him do some different things. He's got more opportunity for tackles. They're kind of like, just stay deep. We got all these other guys that can come up and make plays. Yeah, I'm a fade on him as well. I kind of feel like you're gonna have to get a pick out of him this week, like a deep pick from Lawrence, if you're gonna get any kind of like ceiling with him. I just feel like there's not a very good floor there for him this week.
All right, who is your fade at defensive back this week, JT?
So my fade is Jason Pinnock from the Giants. He's just a guy that you've got some impact plays in the past from him. He's kind of been one of those sneaky plays where like you don't have to spend much from him. You can get him maybe on the waivers. You can do some different stuff with him and play him. He's just been like so blah this year. I mean, he is playing deep safety like pretty much all the time at this point. Tyler Nubin is the guy you want. Nubin's playing 51% of the box snaps, 37. He's playing 37 deep safety, but they're moving him around. Like Nubin's doing different things where like Pennock's pretty much playing deep safety. He's played 64% last week, 21 box snaps. He's just not doing a lot. And he's just, there is like, he's not making any impact plays. Everything's like 4 or 5 tackles a week with like 1 or 2 solos and a couple assists. He's just a guy that I'm off of now. Like I want Newman or I don't want to play anybody in that secondary, even though teams are kind of throwing the ball and going at him a lot. It's just like you look at the matchups every week and you think like, he might be a decent play this spot this week. And he's just never really giving you much. I would much rather for upside, I'd rather play the rookie Andrew Phillips, who's playing a slot corner. I'd rather have him than Pinnock at this point. He's a guy I'm just out on. I had him in a couple best ball leagues, and I was like, I just started looking at the waiver wire. I'm like, why am I just holding this guy? He's not doing anything special for me. I was like, I want some guys that might score me some big weeks. So he's just a guy that I'm kind of fading all around now. I mean, he had a nice sneaky season like 2 years ago and was okay last year, but like he just feels like a guy at this point.
We got Will asking a question here in the chat. Newbin or Harrison Smith, if you had to pick one?
Oh, I'm trying to look at the matchup this week. I like Newbin. I like Newbin against Carolina. They're going to move him around a lot. I think he's going to have a chance to make some plays. Carolina wants to run the ball. If Chuba runs decent, Newbin's going to be that guy that can help make tackles. And I like Newbin's chance to get a takeaway this week, whether it's a pick or a fumble. I just like Newbin. I'm not against Harrison Smith, but again, there's just so many guys making plays for Minnesota. It's tough to get for guys to have big weeks. I like Newbin this week. And that's also why I'm out on Pinnock, is I like Newman way better. I just think he's such a better play this week than Pinnock. And I would usually think, okay, I like the matchup against the Panthers, play Jace Pinnock too, and play Newman, but I just don't. Pinnock's just not doing it for me this year. I just don't like it. He hasn't been doing much at all. And I love Newman in this matchup though. Will I'm on Newman.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the Fantasy Pros scoring, like Newman had, I think, like 3 straight weeks of double-digit fantasy points. He's kind of dropped off a little bit, but I think against Carolina, this is going to be a situation or a game where it's going to be ripe with opportunities for him, especially helping out in run support, because that's basically what the Panthers got. That's all they got.
Yeah, I love it. There was a couple big games early on, so I know for Pinnock, he's one of those guys. He had one monster game like in week 2. He had 2 games where he had back-to-back sacks and he scored 12 and 25 points. But if you look at all the rest of the games this year, I know sometimes you look at overall scoring or whatever guy's done this year, those games are going to throw you way off because he's basically scoring between 3 and 6 points a week. So, if you're looking through and you're like, oh, this guy's got a decent amount of points, maybe he'd be a nice pickup or a play. Don't be fooled. It's literally 2 weeks where he lucked in. They're not usually where he got those sacks is where Newman's getting those sacks now. Now they're letting Newman blitz on those plays and do some things. So he's just a guy. He's low floor, but I like Newman a ton this week.
100%. All right, let's go to. Do you want to work backwards or you want to start at?
Yeah, you might as well. We're going this way. Let's move up to the linebackers.
All right. So my play for the linebacking position is somebody that I can't believe I'm saying, but Anthony Walker, come on down, taking on Los Angeles Rams this week. Played 100% of snaps, had a 15.2% tackle rate last week, 10 tackles per PFF. David Long, it's nice knowing you, or so long.
So long. Yeah, exactly. What is that? Oof.
So yeah, it's definitely Anthony Walker here. As long as he's getting the snap percentage and just been showing the efficiency here. Let me pull up his IDP stats here for week 9. Yeah, LB 32. Granted, still within the top 36. Got you 10.5 points. Yeah, I never thought in a million years I would say with somebody like Jordan Brooks or the flashes of David Long that he had in Tennessee, and then Anthony Walker coming over from Cleveland, that it's Anthony Walker is the one that you want to start. But you know what? He's doing it. He's doing it. And according to Fantasy six pack, again, love the guys over there. They do a great job. Versus the linebacking position, the Rams give up the third most fantasy points to linebackers, which again, 100% of snaps, folks. I mean, follow the snap percentage, follow the efficiency, and most importantly, follow the production, which is why I'm recommending Walker and not recommending for my fade Josie Jewell, Carolina versus the New York Giants. This guy in this linebacking core is straight up an enigma. So let me pull up his efficiency last week. Josie Jewell played nearly 100% of snaps, 98.8. His tackle efficiency, 7.6%. He only got you six tackles. Like, for so much opportunity to have so little production, it's sad, to be honest with you, for managers out there. I have Josie Jewell in a couple dynasty leagues because I liked what he did when he was opposite Alex Singleton in Denver. Well, he's not in Denver anymore. He is the lead guy, and for whatever reason, it's just not clicking there in Carolina. And you would think, the narrative of, well, he's on a bad team with a bad offense, therefore the defense should be on the field more. Therefore, he should have tons of opportunity to make plays on the ball. It just hasn't been working. And even against this matchup with the New York Giants, where there should be a lot of running going on, again, I have more faith in Damani Richardson coming up closer to the line of scrimmage making a play than I do Josie Jewell. So that's why he is my fade. So again, linebackers plays and fade. Anthony Walker play, Josie Jewell fade. Who you got for your play and fade at linebacker, JT?
I love the blast from the past, Anthony Walker. Man, I was a big Anthony Walker fan when he was on the Colts. Good to see him playing well. Man, the guy's dealt with some crazy bad injuries the last couple of years. Long way to fight back for him. Nice to see him playing well. I almost bought my son, his name is Walker. I almost bought him an Anthony Walker jersey when he was little. I asked him if he wanted a jersey, and it said Walker on it, and he was like, no, because he was little, and I don't think he knew like what I was asking him. I think he thought I was like making fun of him or something. It was funny because I brought him up the other day, and he's much older now. This is years and years ago. He's like, what? I was like, yeah, Anthony Walker used to play for the Colts. I almost bought you a Walker jersey. And he was like, oh, that would have been cool. I'm like, I thought so at the time, but you like fought me on it, so I didn't get you one. But now, of course, he's got his whole room decked out in Colts gear, and he's got his JT and AR jerseys and stuff. But I digress on my Anthony Walker blast from the past. So I did like seeing him play well. I like to see him on your plays list. For me, and if you had asked me this a while back, I'd have been like, yeah, you're crazy. Christian Rosen, boom. Got the boom from Christian Rosen. This guy, with Troy Reader out, I mean, he was not playing much at all before. He was getting you like a very low snap count. It was like last year I picked him up in a couple leagues because it was just like there was literally no linebackers that ever played even on the waiver wire, and I had injuries galore, and I was picking him up, and he was playing like 40%, 35% snap share. It was ugly, but I needed somebody. With Reader out, he is taking over as the LB1 here for the Rams, and he really doesn't have much competition for it, and he has been like their only guy. So he played 97.5% of snaps last week, 14% tackle efficiency, 11 tackles per PFF last week. Jake Hummel and Omar Spates, who was like the guy of preseason. Like everybody loves Spates. He had like the highest PFF grade ever. Like everybody was talking about Spates as the guy. Everybody ran out and got him and dropped Roseboom. Spates hasn't done anything. He got very little. He has been played very little this year. In this last week, he only saw 6% of total even snaps. They actually went to a safety. Jalen McCullough actually became the linebacker 2. Whenever they decided to run 2 linebacker sets was pretty crazy. So when I see that, I'm like, just play Roseboom. Just play him. He's going to be in there the whole time. And he has been actually fairly solid. He's been really good of late. And he was like, am shocked that I'm saying that because I would have never thought I would say that before, because he was just like a secondary guy. You never wanted to play him. He just wasn't giving you the snaps. And now back-to-back weeks, he's at 94 and 98% snap share. 6 tackles the 2 weeks before that each week, but 13 if you had those assists and with fantasy pro scoring, he actually had the 11 tackles total. So a guy 19.3 points overall. I think this week going against Miami, I think it's a good matchup there. I think he's going to see a lot of running. I think he's going to have a chance to make plays. So he's a guy that I think, if he's sitting on your bench, you know about him in the past, you're probably looking at him like, oh, do I really want to play him? Like, I never want to. It's always like kind of felt icky to play him. Now's the time. Now's the time to actually get him in your lineups. And he isn't just that end of the bench. Yeah.
So whenever he's a start or something or a play, can we play this little sound clip?
Boom shakalaka!
Rosen boom shakalaka.
That's fantastic because my friend had his my son had one of his friends stay over the other night. And I got an NBA Jam in my basement, and we were rocking out on NBA Jam 2-on-1. They were going against me on NBA Jam, and I had to break out the old school skills and take them out on NBA Jam. I absolutely rocked them. I went old school Golden State Warriors Latrell Sprewell action, just dominated.
Choking PJ Curls.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Old school, good Latrell Sprewell. It was nice.
Wow. I wonder how people got that reference, which is, again, we're up there, JT. I'm not going to say.
I know. Sometimes I just forget. I make references like that, and I'm like, that's not that long ago. And then you like think about it, and you go back, and you're like, holy crap, that's like 30 years ago or something. It's like doesn't seem possible.
Will's like, he's on fire.
He's on fire. That's right. He's on fire. I got on fire a couple times last night. I was, like I said, I was torching the boys on the game.
Who's your faded linebacker this week?
So my faded linebacker, this is a guy I know me and you have discussed him on many occasion on this show. And he's just always a tough decide on you want to play him or not. And that's Cody Barton. It's Cody Barton. It's like you look at him and you're like, he's got the opportunity. He's like okay, but he's not awesome. Like, you just kind of look at him and you're just like, is he going to be a good player? Is he not? Then when he does play well, he sucks you in and you're like, oh, see, I knew it. I knew he should have been a play, and I knew I should have put him in there. And then when he doesn't play well, you're like, burn me, freaking burn me again. He's just been up and down this year. And here's the issue for me. So if you look at this, like if you glance at the stats from last week, what should be a big, good game for him playing against the Ravens who want to pound the rock, 7 tackles, 6 assists, only 1 solo. In the week before against Carolina, another game where you're like, oh, good matchup. They want to run with Chuba. They don't want to throw too much. 2 tackles, 1 solo. And outside of the New Orleans game where he had 6 tackles, 2 assists, a sack, a pass defense, a forced fumble where he had a great game, and that's where he sucks you back in. The week before that, 8 tackles, but 1 solo, 7 assists. So he's absolutely burned you 3 of the last 4 weeks with 1 really nice week that sucks you in. I'm getting off the train. I'm off the Cody Barton train. I'm tired of riding it. I'm sick of the ups and downs. The last 2 weeks looked like prime time matchups for him. Didn't do anything. I'm out. I can't do it. If I got anybody else, I'm going somewhere else. I think the Chiefs have been a tough matchup for guys to get like solid scoring because they just do a little bit of everything. I'm just out on Barton. He's not good in coverage. I'm not feeling it.
And correct me if I'm wrong here, but like having him on your roster, let me put it another way, not having him on your roster takes so much stress away of like, do I, don't I? where it's like, you know what?
That's the way to put it. It does. It takes out the stress because like every week you look at him and you're like, dude, this guy's playing 100% snaps. Like this
Right.
should be a good matchup. And you're like trying to talk yourself in. And then as soon as you put him in the lineup and you hit submit, you're like, oh shit.
Right.
Shit.
What did I
Is he
just
gonna
do?
is he gonna put up is he gonna give me nothing this week? Yeah,
Right.
he's just a stressful dude to have. Like I said, and for me personally, I feel like he sucks me in all the time because I'm like, I got him on enough teams where he was super cheap and I didn't have a lot of linebackers. I'm like, oh, I can, when he was on Washington, I'm like, oh, I can see him being good here. I can see him doing this. I talked myself into him just because of opportunity and he burns me. So
Yeah.
I've officially, like I said, I'm off the Cody Barton train. I'm not doing it.
All right, let's finish up here our plays and fades with the defensive lineman position. My play, speaking of Washington, Dorrance Armstrong, you amazing son of a gun. Come on down. Love it. PFF's number 8 rated edge rusher in pass rushing. He has a win rate against offensive linemen of 19.7%, which is very good, meaning he gets past his offensive lineman blocks. He's got, let's see here, 24 total pressures on the season, 4 sacks. And who's he going against? He's going against the guy, Broderick Jones. We've talked about him before, folks. This guy cannot, he can't do a lot. He can't do a lot of blocking, yet the Pittsburgh Steelers, they keep putting him out there. He has given up 21 pressures this year for 7 sacks, a quarterback hit, quarterback hurries. This guy is just not a good, just not good. I'm sure he's a great guy, like a person. I feel like you see the stats and you see the lack of production, and you're like ready to bash him, but like you go kind of a conversation with him. I bet you he's like the nicest guy. But I'm assuming, I have no idea. But at the same time, just really bad for fantasy. And he's going against Dorrance Armstrong, who's been the one stabilizing force here on the Commanders' defensive line. I almost wanted to go Dante Fowler because he has been the DL5 in Fantasy Pro scoring, I want to say, for the past 3 weeks or 4 weeks. But I can't pass up Dorrance Armstrong going against Broderick Jones. So that's where I'm going with my play. For my fade, look, I get he signed his contract. Okay. He got into some action. I think he got like half a sack or a sack or something last week. I'm still not ready to jump on board the Hassan Reddick train there for the New York Jets. I still think it's McDonald and that defensive lineman that you want to be starting over Reddick. Again, you picked him up on your waiver wire. You maybe have been stashing him for a majority of the season, Hassan Reddick, that is, because of what he could do for you down the road. We're not at down the road yet, okay? Down the road is like we get close to fantasy playoffs, like weeks 12, 13, 14. Then that's when you make your tough decisions. Do you cut bait or do you stick with him? And if he's tearing it up, then obviously you're sticking with him. But now is not the time to get cute and play him just because of his name value and what he's done in the past. Let's see. You have some time. Let's see some productivity first before we start going all in on the big name for Hassan Reddick. So for me this week, my play is Dorrance Armstrong for Washington versus Pittsburgh, and my fade is Hassan Reddick for the Jets going against the Arizona Cardinals. JT, who you got, man?
Yep, love both those calls. For me, I said he was a fade a couple weeks ago because he got off to a bad start to the season, but he has really turned it up lately, and that is Arden Key for the Tennessee Titans. Has really turned it on the last couple weeks. Feels like he's getting his footing there where he kind of fits with that team. He just had not played well at the beginning of the year. Couldn't get any sacks. I faded him and he scored 0.8 points. So I was like loving the fade. Since I faded him, he has been a play. He's got 4 sacks in the last 3 weeks, 12 points, 23.8 points, and 16 points in Fantasy Pro scoring. Now he gets the Chargers. And while I like the Chargers and Justin Herbert, they are not protecting him. Herbert sacked 6 times last week by the Cleveland Browns, and they've got 4 straight games where they're giving up at least 3 sacks. So this is a nice spot here, I think, for Key to keep it going. If you're on a league where people haven't noticed the uptick, if they're just looking at average because he got off to a really, really slow start, he's a guy that might be out there being available. And again, if you do have him on your roster and you haven't jumped on board and playing him yet, now's the time to get him in there. Is he's on a hot streak and he's going against a Chargers offensive line that has definitely struggled the last couple weeks. My fade for the week is Kwity Paye from the Colts. I know it's hard to hear me say that. I never fade my Colts players, but here's why I'm fading Kwity. Going against the Bills at home, Josh Allen is a tough guy to bring down, tough man to sack on the year. And they've just been rotating. So if you look at what they've done, the Bills in the last 5 games have only given up more than 1 sack in 1 game, and they gave up 2. And that was of the Jets. So this is the chances of the Colts getting home, especially when they rotate guys, is just tough. And you're going to have to like literally pick between 4 guys and which guy do you think is possibly going to get that 1 sack. I don't want to take that chance this week. If I've got other options, I'm going with those. Also, because of this, Kwity Paye just sitting on just 2.5 sacks this year, and he got 1 of them last week. Now, usually like, oh, we just got 1. He got 1 sack. It was the only play he made. He had a 1 solo tackle, 1 assist, and a sack. That was it. The 2 games before that, 1 tackle, 1 tackle. So he has just not been. I like Kwity Paye as a player. He has not been productive for IDP purposes. I have him on a lot of teams, as you would expect as a Colts guy. I just can't get myself to get him in the lineup right now. And especially with this matchup against the Bills, the chances of him getting home after getting home last week, I'm like, this is the ultimate fade. He got 1 last week. He's been terrible. And now they play Josh Allen of the Bills. I don't like it. I think they're going to be playing from behind. I think the Bills are going to get up in this game and then play winners. I'm hoping I'm wrong. I'm hoping the Colts keep it close. My buddy John McGlynn from Dynasty Evaluation here on Fantasy Frames, he's going to the game with me, driving down. Me and one of his buddies are going to the game. He's as anybody doesn't know John, he grew up a Dolphins fan, loved Dan Marino. He has since cast off the Dolphins. He's out on the Dolphins and now has moved on to Josh Allen because he likes Josh Allen. So now he's rooting for Allen and the Bills. So he was like, I'd love to go to that game with you. So we're going to that game. So that would be great. I can't do it. I can't get on any of the defensive ends for the Colts this week. Now, like we talked about earlier, hey, yeah, play those linebackers, play those safeties, but I'm out on the defensive end plays. We got a comment here from Will. Key played 87% of snaps last week. Absolutely. So he's also the snap share is going up on Key, as well as him getting home. A ton of talent out of that guy. He's finally putting it all together here. So that's my Arn Key, my play, and Kwity Paye, my fade.
Jamie in the chat here. Dan Marino is my all-time favorite quarterback. He was the first jersey I read. How about that? Fun facts.
Nice. Very nice. I had a Mark Clayton Dolphins jersey when I was a kid, if you can believe that. I don't know why. I thought it was the coolest jersey. I liked him on Tecmo Bowl, and I bought a Mark Clayton Dolphins jersey. I think my mom got it for me for Christmas. I freaking loved it. I've had more random jerseys of players in my life. My son, I told you, my son and his friend came over, and I've got like a collection of jerseys just hanging in my basement, and they were like going through and like asking me questions about the players and who was this guy and who was that guy, or like if they noticed who the player was, like, oh, why do you have that jersey? I'm like, oh, I went to this school or whatever. It was hilarious, like telling them about all my jerseys and stuff. So that was a fun little throwback there.
Will with the Ace Ventura reference. Finkel greater than Marino. Finkel, Einhorn, Finkel, Einhorn, Finkel.
Freaking Marino, laces out, Marino, laces out.
Exactly. Let's see. We got Dom in the chat here with an offense question. JT's got you covered.
We'll find out. Let me jump in on that, Dom. I'll answer you now.
Okay. And while he's doing that, let's take you to our last segment, as we do every week here on Shoot the Gap. We tell you about a player that we are going to be calling our shot on that will get you a sack. And the segment here is called super original, but you know what? It gets the point across, and yeah, I like it. So this week, my sack lunch is going to go to Mr. Montez Sweat of the Chicago Bears, lining up against DeMontre Jacobs of the New England Patriots. This is how awesome DeMontre Jacobs has been. This season at the tackle position, he has allowed the 7th most pressures, which is crazy, bad, and has given up 5 sacks and 4 quarterback hits. Those 5 sacks are tied for 5th most amongst tackles. No bueno. He's in Broderick Jones level of offensive line blocking, and Montez Sweat, who is a straight up beast, is going to be doing some bad things to him this week. So give me Montez Sweat here. JT, if you're done with the thing, who do you got for you?
Yep, I am. I just answered that. And before I answered mine, I was just going to put in there. We Will jumped in there talking about my random jersey, because the most random jersey I owned is Rashaan Salam black Colorado Buffaloes jersey. Will, you do not know how freaking jealous I am. I was just at a Colorado Buffaloes game 2 weeks ago with my niece who goes to CU, and we were walking around. A couple people had jerseys on, and I looked at everyone. I said, "You know what would be an awesome jersey?" I saw a girl with a 19 Rashaan Salam. I was like, "That's sweet." I was like, "Rashaan Salam Heist Trophy winner." I loved it. I was like, and people were looking at me like I was crazy, of course, because I was with all young kids who had no idea what I was talking about. I was like, "Dude, I would kill for a Rashaan Salam or a number 1 Eric Bieniemy Colorado Buffaloes jersey." I was like, "That would be sweet." And just I'm going off on a tangent. Just got a Colorado Buffaloes signed Cordell Stewart mini helmet.
Wow.
I found out, got it at auction. My dad bought it for me for Christmas. So it's an early Christmas. I'm getting it at Christmas. I don't have it up on my shelf yet, but he bought it for me. I found it. He's like, "Oh, I'll get that for you for Christmas." But big Cordell Stewart guy. I loved him on the Steelers. I loved Colorado when I was a kid. I almost went to school there. My niece goes there now. So that was awesome to go to the game. Unreal stadium. If you've never been to a stadium in Boulder, it's the coolest stadium, especially when it's if you go to like an early, like late afternoon game, like the sun coming down, looking out the stadium, you can see the mountains. It's freaking awesome. So we went to game. It was a great game. Got to see Travis Hunter, Shadur Sanders, the whole crew. It was awesome. But I just had to put that up there. Will, super jealous of the Rashaan Salam Colorado Buffaloes jersey. That's freaking phenomenal. So now I went on my real rant there. For my sack this week. So here's a guy I'm going, and this is a little bit of a surprise, but man, I tell you what, it's taken a while for us to get here, but he's finally doing something. And this is former number 1 pick, Trayvon Walker of Georgia Bulldogs. We're finally seeing it. He's getting in there with absent of Hines Allen. I'm trying to pull him up for what he's done. The last couple weeks, he's not been great the last 2 weeks, but he had 7 tackles last week against Philly. Didn't get home against them, but he's got 4.5 sacks in the last 4 weeks. He's been playing much better. He had 2 sacks earlier in the season. His win rate has been much improved. They've done a good job of really getting him out there. 6.5 sacks this year is great. He had 10 last year in 17 games, got 6.5 and 9 this year. So we're finally getting to see that double, what we wanted to from the Jags. Got Walker on one side, Hines Allen on the other side. Walker, I think, gets home this week. He's my sack. Vikings a little banged up on the offensive line. I think there's a chance that Walker takes advantage in this game. Call it a gut feeling, but I like the matchup. I think he gets home this week.
All right, we got one more question here from Julian Garcia in the chat. JT, if you want to take – that's a good question, though. He says, trade away A.J. Brown and J.K. Dobbins for Puka and Kenneth Walker. I'm assuming you mean redraft, or do you mean Dynasty? If you can let us know, Julian, we would appreciate that. But aside from all that, that's gonna wrap us up here on Shoot the Gap. I did not plan for that to rhyme. I'm so sorry. Anyhow, JT, before we get going, any last words here for the folks in terms of what you got working on or things to expect?
Yeah, look for my IDP plays and fades article out on Fantasy and Frames this week. And if you want a little bit of an early look, it's not IDP related, but if you want a little bit of an early look at what I think are the top players on the offensive side of the ball for the upcoming NFL draft in April for the 2025 draft, I've got an article coming out on DLF. For that one, I've got my first and second round players, a stallment of guys to take a look for. This one's not IDP. I will have an IDP one later on in the year. This one is just offensive guys, but that one's going to be out. So if you're a member over there, check it out. I'll post it on my page at JT Orange when I get that one out there. And like I said, just check out the fades and plays article. We'll have a couple of guys we talked about tonight, but I'll have extra guys in there for D-line, linebacker, and DB.
And of course, you could check out me on the Fantasy and Frames kickoff show every Sunday from 9 a.m. Eastern to noon and even past noon, as we cover, a lot of start-sit questions. We try to cover every single NFL game. We normally cover every single NFL game, giving you the players you went on offense and defense. But we had so many start-and-sit questions on Sunday. We kind of broke our script there. But you know what? Hey, give the people what they want. Tomorrow I also have didn't get it out in time this week. Apologies. We'll get it out next week on time. We'll give you a little waiver wire article now that waivers have run. We'll give you some waiver wire advice here for IDP. So you got a waiver wire article and you got a plays and fades for IDP coming out tomorrow. So stay tuned for that. We got Will in the chat here. Great show. Once again, guys, appreciate all the input you both provide. Thank you. Thank you all for tuning in. Seriously, really appreciate this. Whether you're East Coast staying up past midnight hanging out with us, or you're Central or, Mountain or Pacific, whatever, all those time zones, or maybe even the international crowd, whoever you are, wherever you are.
We like it anytime, wherever you're at. It's all good, right?
It's all good. So for JT, I'm Jorge. We will see you this time next week, folks. Take care.